Welcome, friends, to a podcast with interesting people. My guest today is Kalayjian. She is a board-certified expert in traumatic stress and a fellow of New York Academy of Medicine. She is a president of Association for Trauma Outreach and Prevention and an adjunct professor of psychology, Teachers College at Columbia University. And also, she's a United Nations representative with such a rich background in psychotherapy in that space. We're going to be talking about a lot of different topics surrounding psychotherapy and surrounding mental health, especially nowadays in the context of the coronavirus pandemic and how it's impacting what's happening right now.
Thank you so much for having me today. This is amazing.
I am very excited to talk to you because you have such a rich career and background in this space of psychotherapy and mental health counseling. You bring so much to the table, and the time right now is such so critical in terms of taking care of ourselves. With this pandemic, with this corona pandemic and how it's impacting, our whole society. People are stressed out. Domestic violence is on the rise. All of these different things are happening, and it's very important to kind of address it, be aware of what's happening, and what people can do about it. But before we're going to start about all of that, let's talk about you a little bit. I want to learn more about, your whole career. You have such a rich career, and you bring so much to the table. And so, can you just tell us in your own words, how did you start with the field that you're in, psychotherapy, and all the different things that you've done in it, and you also, I forgot to mention that you're also a published book author. You have 5 books, and I understand you're writing the 6th one right now. So you have just so much to bring in. So tell us a little bit more about you.
Thank you. This is a great opportunity. I want to start, though, with the question a lot of people ask psychologists, what made you go into psychology? And for me, growing up in Syria, in the midst of a war with Israel and gender discrimination, and my father being a survivor of Ottoman Turkish genocide of 1915 of Armenians, where over 2 million Armenians were slaughtered and thrown out of their homes, as a child, I carried a lot of the generational trauma, which I didn't know what it was, of course, at that time. And only when I came to the United States with my family at the age 15 and a half, going on 16, I learned about my trauma, that it was generational, that I'm carrying my father's and my mother's depression, sadness, and anger regarding the genocide, and that it is a secret one, that it's not acknowledged. It's only acknowledged now, 140 years later, only by 28 countries, and both United States and Turkey, the perpetrator, have not acknowledged it. So that still bears a lot of sadness, a lot of hopelessness, a lot of lack of faith and justice in the system. So that's what was moving me to do something that would help people. So I thought I started with the nursing because I thought in America that's the shortest way I can get to help people. Because we didn't have resources, financial resources, and I had to help start working even in high school here. So it was very challenging for me to think about going into psychology, which I wanted to, but then it was a longer route of 15, 20 years of education. So I started with nursing, and then I got discovered while I was in a community college because my grades were super high and I was very studious. One thing our parents passed on to us, the value of education, because they couldn't have. My father was not able to get educated. He had to learn reading, writing himself. My mom was taken out of 8th grade at age 15 to get married, at age 14 or something, to get married. And she had her first child at 16. So all those made me want to help myself, my family, and the community at large. So I was discovered in the community college, then I went to Long Island University, and then I was accepted to Columbia University with full scholarship and stipend. And I was working at nights because at that time I was already registered nurse. I was working at Metropolitan Hospital in New York City and going to school during the day at Columbia University, and I got my doctorate there. Then I got my honorary doctorate from Long Island University. So initially, I was into psychodynamic, psychoanalytic approach of psychology, the Freudian importance of catharsis, which is very important. But then I was fortunate to meet Viktor Frankl, who was the author of Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah, a lot of people know that book. So when I saw that on your website that you studied with him, I was very excited about that because I wanted to talk to you about it and learn how that experience was in your life and how that shaped what you're doing right now. So tell us more about that.
It was an amazing turning point in my life, both personally and professionally, because we had just completed interviewing 50 survivors of Armenian survivors of Ottoman Turkish genocide, and that made us so sad to realize that although they prospered, they were doing so well in America. But when it came to the question of how are you feeling now, knowing that Turkish government has denied it for over 100 years, they were filled with anger and started cursing these good old grandmas and grandpas of 70, 75 years of age. They had so much anger that was released with that question. It made me really concerned, because at the last stage of our development, we need to be in a more peaceful place. So my question to Viktor Frankl was, all his family members were killed in Auschwitz, including his wife. But he came out with a positive message of learning, discovering a new positive meaning. Just like what Mandela said. When he left the prison, he said if he knew very well, if he left the prison but kept his anger and resentment, then he would be in prison for life, for the rest of his life. So he then realized he needs to forgive and learn a positive lesson for himself. And that was what connected with me and helped me. He said, you have to help your community to forgive. My jaw dropped. To forgive something that has not been acknowledged and empathized and verified. How do you do that? And he, very stern Viennese accent, he said, how long do you plan to wait? Isn't it enough? You're suffering. And the light bulb went on in my, just the whole being. And I'm like, that's true. We are waiting for our perpetrator to bring acknowledgement and validation on a silver platter. That's not going to happen. They have denied it for so long. They're not going to acknowledge it so easy. They're not going to admit that they have lied all these years. We have to shift and find the inner validation, inner acknowledgement, and inner peace through forgiveness, which really made us create the forgiveness book, which is a compilation of research from around the world, from Darfur, from the life prisoners in America, how they achieved forgiveness, from the genocide, from the Holocaust, from others. And this is the first time that the F word, forgiveness, is entering the scientific arena of psychology. Before that, whenever I approached the F word, forgiveness, we were pushed away from the scientific community and psychology specifically, saying that belongs into religious realm. That is spiritual stuff. That is not scientific. There is no proof. And we were shunned from scientific community until this book was published in 2010, and the whole shift began. Before 2010, when you had searched the scientific literature, you would not find forgiveness studied in scientific journals. But now when you search, you will find hundreds, maybe even thousands of research. And it was able to enter into conflict transformation and peace building procedures. Before that, forgiveness was never used in courts, in mediation, in the justice system at all. But it is very important part. We all need to achieve self-forgiveness first, and then forgiving whomever has done wrong by us.
So you mentioned something right now about courts and the international even mediation. You in your portfolio of all the things that you've done, you've also engaged with United Nations. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? How did that come about? And then we're going to circle back to Viktor Frankl, because I have some questions on that, how you met him and all. What did you do with United Nations?
Yes. So our organization, Meaningful World, is affiliated with United Nations, both Department of Global Communication, as well as the ECOSOC, Economic and Social Council. So that means that we have a team at the UN. 5, 6, 7 member team. We have interns, we have fellows, and we have representatives. So I am the main representative, and we attend official meetings. We give our perspective, the scientific research outcomes that we have. We share those scientific papers with them. We share what is happening at the UN with our community by posting on social media as well as on our website and integrated human rights declaration, for example. We integrate in every lecture, in every workshop that we have in 48 countries around the world and 26 states in America. The Declaration of Human Rights, many people don't know about it, haven't read it, have no idea what their rights are, and especially in developing countries, even here in America, people are unaware of their rights. And the other thing that we celebrate is the Commission of Status of Women, and we organize workshops, symposia, and different lectures and different festivals at the UN. We were the first in 1993 to have the first all-day conference on mental health. Mental health was not part of the agenda at the UN. Delegates went in from talking about millions of people died in Congo because of the genocide, and millions died or thousands in Palestine because of the conflict with Israel. And then they go and have their coffee and they press it down. They never process it. They never talk about the secondary trauma that they are facing. The secondary trauma is when, like a psychologist or a lawyer or a mediator, 8 hours of the day you are facing traumatic stories and traumatic situations. So vicariously and secondarily, we absorb some of that trauma. Just like a painter, when they're painting the walls and the house, they come home and they have paint all over. No matter how much they protect themselves, they have paint. Now that's visible. We see that.
Right.
But with mental health, we don't really see that people are carrying so much, but just by listening to others who are traumatized. So at the UN, we have organize many workshops to the diplomats. We have taught a course on forgiveness to the diplomats, all the delegates there from 200 different countries. So we are very much involved in making a difference and helping the UN embrace the proper terminologies, because in the beginning they would talk about health is physical health and maternal health, malaria, number of malaria cases, where we're going to go, cholera. They did not have any notion of mental health. So with that first inaugural meeting in 93, we started talking about mental health. So in 2000, we brought in the word psychology. So now it still is not very much used at the UN, because a lot of the countries still use mental health, not psychology, in terms of terminology. And they don't have psychology discipline developed in many developing countries. In fact, the 48 countries that we have traveled, almost 40 countries did not have a mental health system. We started them with mobile mental health vans, with clinics, with the, wherever they have AIDS clinic, we had added a room for mental health to talk about their emotions, etc. So that's how UN is started to shift. It took 30 years because things move very slowly at the UN, because you need 200 countries to agree on one word. And what they kept on putting mental health in brackets until the government or majority of those states will agree, and then the brackets will be dropped off.
So what changed? So what changed that made that shift to accept mental health as a important factor that needs to be discussed? Is it just the time that it took, the 30 years of basically bringing it to attention, talking about it, was that what caused?
Talking about it, bringing the research papers from different countries that we have worked, 48 countries. So it's not just US based, because in the beginning they pushed it saying, well, this is a Western thing. We don't deal with that. But everybody has emotions. This has nothing to do with the West or the East. Every country, every person goes through over 1,700 different emotions per day. But while we are at work, we keep pushing those feelings down. Oh, it's not the right time. I don't want to lose control. I continue working. Oh, no, my boss is here. I can't show vulnerability, and push it down. And sometimes we push it so far down, then we want to retrieve it. It's no longer accessible. We need professional help. That's when EMDR is very helpful. Which
Can can you tell us a little bit more about what EMDR is for those who don't know? I spoke with other doctors on my show who do EMDR, but from your perspective, what is EMDR when you explain to someone who comes to your office, and why do people use it? Why do you guys as professionals use EMDR?
Right. So EMDR is a shortcut to therapeutic emotional healing, especially when your issues are fear, phobia, recent trauma, even long-term trauma. I have worked with clients who had the trauma 20 years back when they were 8 years old and they didn't have recollection of it. EMDR will bring up the memories that are pushed down, or the memories that happened, traumatic memories as a child, where we didn't have the language, the words, 2, cognitive development, 3, emotional development. So we know something bad happened, but we cannot describe or access it. So what the EMDR does, it brings everything up from down. Whatever was pushed down will bring everything up for you as an adult in a therapeutic milieu in front of a professional to look at each memory and make adult sense of what they are. That is not your fault because you were a child, apparently, and what to do to overcome those feelings. So it's a wonderful short treatment modality, and I studied with the creator, Francine Shapiro. God rest her soul. She has passed away since a few years back. And I find it very effective, very quick for phobias, traumas, both short-term and long-term traumas.
How does it look in terms of when someone comes in?
Yes, if you are sitting right in front of me like this, the therapist would have their finger going right, left, and you have to follow with your eyes, not moving your neck. Right, left, and then we close your eyes and you say first thing that comes up, because you're generating and releasing some old memories. Sometimes it feels like it has nothing to do with the trauma that you're describing, but after a while you will find the outcome. So it's not therapist focused. Therapist is just doing this and guiding the client. It's very much client-centered, and it's beautiful because client feels empowered that they found the solution. They found the real cause of their trauma.
Why does it work? I mean, it's curious, like the eye, the eye movement going left and right. What is happening behind the scenes? What's happening in our brains when we do that?
It's almost like mimicking REM sleep, where our eyes are moving rapidly, but you are awake. That is the difference. You are awake and able to elicit, okay, what does this mean to me? What does this mean to me? Now, I don't need this in my life, and you'll be able to evaluate it because all your memories would be in front of you, more clearly laid out. So if you had, for example, let me share this. We had a trauma, let's say you had a trauma when you were a child. Because you were a child, you put the trauma all the way in the bottom and you internalized it. You said, well, daddy left because I was a bad boy, which a lot of little kids internalize when they don't have language to express and discharge, when they can't complain to the abuser and they can't ask for their rights, human rights. So they're going to put the trauma all the way in the bottom and then put other things on top. What EMDR does, it's like a tsunami. Ooh, it makes all the papers go out of order and makes you see every memory and how it has lined up and how it's been covered. You uncover it, and then you start looking at it, and so when you see the trauma, you say, wow, daddy left, that was my fault. And the therapist would help and say, you were a child, that is nowhere it could be your fault. Usually dads leave because of their relationship with the mother or whatever happened in his life, because something traumatic happened in your dad's life that had nothing to do with you. So then we have a discussion about each memory and how they have interpreted and what meaning they have associated with that memory.
It's amazing that such a seemingly simple thing as eyes moving left and right can bring something like that up. I'm very curious to know like what's happening behind the scenes on a neurological level. Why is this allowing this access to the subconscious memories that we had, these traumas maybe even, or these events, these memories that were shaped, that later on in life are shaping us, and a simple thing as this kind of binaural thing going left and right is actually kind of bringing, doing this tsunami that you said, the tornado that takes all these memories up and allows us the access to it.
Exactly. Well, there is a similarity with the REM sleep. They tried, because Francine Shapiro discovered this by accident. She was talking about her childhood trauma with her friend. And then she started rapidly moving her eyes right and left, right and left, right and left. And then when she told the story again, it wasn't heart-wrenching anymore. The level, let's say the severity of her reaction was 10 before, from 0 to 10, 10 being the highest level. It came down to 8. So she told the story again and moved her eyes to her friend. It went down to 6. She did it again. It went down to 5. And then she started modeling on others. So the scientific explanation came much afterwards because it was already working. She tried it with her friends, she tried it with others, she tried did cases, etc., and then she started teaching it.
Amazing.
And I was one of the first group that we certified by her.
Let's go back to forgiveness in conversation with
Viktor Frankl.
With Viktor Frankl. How did you meet him? And and tell me how. Tell me again about how his perception of, or his approach to forgiveness, because forgiveness is such a, everybody sort of like understands it, but it's a whole different thing. Just kind of not understanding and practicing it, right? Like especially when you have, like you said, when you bring in that mental, emotional baggage of your family dying in a holocaust, in a genocide. It's easy to say, oh, forgive, but like you said, like practicing it and actually implementing it is it's a whole different world. Can you tell me more about, I'd love to learn from your perspective, your interactions with him. How did he convince you, with you having that emotional background as well from your family and the genocide that happened to Armenians, and from his perspective, the genocide that happened to Jews. Tell me a little bit more about those interactions with him, and how did he, I guess, impact you?
Well, I actually met him virtually in a I am ashamed to share this incident, because I was writing my master's thesis at Columbia, and I wrote about meaning of suffering. Now, I didn't know Viktor Frankl, because remember, I came here when I was 15 and a half, 16, and I didn't know English. So I was kind of delayed in catching up reading books in English here, both in high school, because at high school I had to learn English. So all my efforts went to English and American history so that I can graduate. So I never had a chance to read basic books that I should have read, which Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning is one of the basic books even high schools here private high schools make it a required book for English. So when I wrote the thesis and presented it to my dissertation thesis advisor, he gave me F and said I was plagiarizing Viktor Frankl. Now, that was a paper, not research, not use any data from outside. It was from my heart.
Right.
And I was talking about meaning of suffering because my dad was also going through cancer, and I was really having being the caregiver, the main caregiver, because as a nurse or a doctoral person, you get that designated the caregiver position in your family. So it was so he asked me to go and read the book. I hadn't read it. But everything that I had in my paper was the essence of meaning making from suffering, which is the main thesis of what Man's Search for Meaning is about, what logotherapy is about. Logotherapy is logos, meaning centered instead of feeling centered. So Viktor Frankl was friends with both Freud and Adler. He separated from them. He didn't like them. He said, he told me he didn't like Freud because Freud was talking about sex too much and mother and was missing the point. And he didn't like Adler either. And he was very proud that he didn't smoke cigar nor he was smoking the pipe. And we were at the Logotherapy convention, and we were invited to then take classes with him personally. And he was like 90 plus at the time. He could hardly see because he had issues with his eyesight, and he had remarried, of course, after the surviving the Holocaust, and his wife was killed there in Auschwitz, so he remarried, and his wife was helping him with the reading because he couldn't see well. He had to put something slide this close to his eyes to be able to see partially. But he was full of humor. He was throwing jokes right and left and making fun of himself and, just saying how important it is to keep the sense of humor alive. And when I shared with him about how we just interviewed these survivors, Armenian survivors of Ottoman Turkish genocide, and they have anger about the denial. He was quick. He said, you have to help them forgive. And I was quick too, and I said, how do you do that when they don't acknowledge and they don't validate? And then he was quick to say, well, how long you plan to wait? Indicating that, you don't wait for your so-called enemy to give you validation. How long you plan to wait? That was already at the time almost 75, 80 years after the genocide. Mm-hmm. So then, sitting with him with days, taking courses on logotherapy and meaning-centered therapy, I realized how I have carried also generational trauma from my parents, and how finally I can shed that because I had digestive problems, I had throat problems, tonsillitis all the time as a kid, and then digestive problems because they kept really getting scared that I'm gonna die, and they kept bringing antibiotics from the city for just a little bit of sore throat because they were so afraid that I was going to die because my sibling before me had died a year old because of high temperatures, so high fever. My mom was very, very cautious about that. So all those physical reactions are the outcome of the generational trauma because we carry it and you can't see the emotional trauma.
Right.
Yeah, 3 people in the last week have committed suicide just for this unable to deal and cope with the COVID-19. And they're in their 30s, 32, 34, 36 men who committed suicide. And one of them was not able to survive and was not able to die, and they have to amputate his legs. And all of them with small children, so we're trying to reach out to them to see if we can help them. So there are 5 different kinds of traumas. There is the generational trauma, that which we carry from our ancestors, and all of us have that, because there is no ancestor who did not go through the World Wars 1 and 2, the Depression, the Korean War, the Vietnam War. We all know and have someone in our families that have been in wars. So we all are carrying the generational trauma. Then we have individual traumas, everyday traumas or accidents or family traumas or bullying in school. I went through a lot of that when I came here at age 15 and 15 and a half in high school. I was in affluent Fort Lee high school, but whenever they see somebody who doesn't speak the language, I think they think they're dumb and they start abuse them, asking me, to go back on the boat that I came, wherever I came from. I didn't even come on a boat, I flew. So they were very mean and very demeaning. Everything I said, I couldn't win. Where are you from? I say, I'm Armenian. They were like, what's that? And what's the country? And I say, well, it's Soviet Armenia now. At the time, it was Soviet Armenia because the 3/4 of Armenia Turkey took, and it's Turkey. And the 1/3 that the Russians took, they enforced it to be Soviet at the time. That's the only way they will protect them from the Ottomans. And then they would say, oh, you're Soviet, you're communist, get away from me. And I'm like, I wasn't even born in Armenia. I was born in Syria. Oh, you're terrorists, stay away from me. It's like I couldn't win for losing, as they say in American. Right. So I got a lot of bullying. So that's individual trauma. The third one is vicarious trauma for professionals and religious people who hear about trauma day in and day out. And the fourth kind is collective trauma, like the COVID-19, like the 9/11. You may not necessarily get the COVID-19 personally, but we are all in this together. So it's a collective trauma. And the last but not least is horizontal trauma. Horizontal trauma is something that happens to minorities, like African Americans in America. They call that the crab in the bucket syndrome. Have you heard that?
No.
One crab wants to get out of the bucket, second one pulls it down. The third crab wants to get out of the bucket, the fourth one pulls it down. So no one gets out of the bucket.
Right.
And that's how we traumatize one another horizontally. That means this is a researched phenomenon. So, for example, African Americans or some Haitians, because this is happening in Haiti, in Armenia, in Sierra Leone. So you have an entity that is oppressing the big government or colonizers, whoever they are. They're pressing up, down. And the frustration of the people goes from down up. There's nowhere to blow up because you keep getting pressed down. This continues, ongoing pressing down. So this frustration has nowhere to go but horizontal. Boom! Who's next to me? My own brother and sisters. I put them down unconsciously. I am jealous of their success. I'm envious. I find ways to talk ill things about them or lies. And this is called horizontal trauma, horizontal violence scientifically. But do you know what it's called in Haiti? Haitian disease. What it's called in Sierra Leone? Sierra Leonean disease. You know how 10 years Sierra Leone went through the inner fights with militia and their own people killed the others. So, and in women, because women are oppressed in every nation in a different level. So how many times you've seen articles such as, there was one 20 years ago in New York Times, women eat their young. That means women don't encourage the young to succeed. That's horizontal trauma, horizontal violence. So there are 5 different kinds of traumas that we work with. Whatever country we go to, or even here locally, once a month we have workshops. The next one is on April 25. I can send you the link and people can join. It's a workshop that prepares you to be humanitarian ambassadors.
Some of the things that you touched on, I've personally experienced myself. And so I relate to it. The older I get, and the more I process all of this, I feel that a lot of misery in the world is caused by the problem with identity. A lot of because we identify with certain things, we identify with who you are, where are you coming from, who what influenced you, what religion, creed, and all of those different things. And it seems like, just like you experienced bullying in high school, when they were like, well, where are you from? And putting you in these buckets, in these stereotypical things, right? Like, oh, you're this, therefore you must be that, and so on. It seems that this is still one of the biggest sources of conflicts in the world, whether it's based on religion or just localities or everywhere. And United States being this huge melting pot of different cultures, different people coming in from different places, was this grand experiment of these people interacting, and we strive now for diversity. We strive because we say that this is what makes us stronger, that coming in from having these people from different places, having different perspectives, different views of things is what makes us stronger. And at the same time, it's like the biggest thing that divides us. What are your thoughts on identity? And you come from this unique perspective in which you coming into this country, you've experienced this, how people are treating you differently because of you have different identity in a sense of coming in from a different country. Can you tell me more about, from your professional standpoint of view, how is identity helping us and not helping us in this world, and what do you think is going to happen next? Because we have these divisions that are now seemingly increasing, especially now under COVID-19, when people are stressed even more and more, and who knows what's going to happen next. But from a perspective of identity.
Yes, I feel that it's identity is being misused to discharge people's anger and aggression. Just recently, even last week, I heard someone, and because they looked Asian or they are Asian, they were either beaten or some kind of physical violence was directed towards them. I feel that is just unjust and unfair. There's multiple populations with different identities. I think we should celebrate differences. Differences don't mean anything bad except what we do. If we discriminate against them, then it's identity is used towards destructive means. But if I can even tell, people ask me, oh, where are you from? and I would say New York. Let's say I am in California or I am in another country, and I would say New York, USA, and say, no, there's another accent.
Right.
What is that I hear? And I would say, well, let's see, Armenian, Syrian, American.
Right.
But I can tell from their face, the ones that have phobias of different identity and not being white American, and those who are curious and they get involved, they want to know more about how it was to live as a Christian minority in Syria after being, having my dad and the Armenians walk through deserts for 6 months to get to Syria, and Syria welcoming, even though Syria is also another Muslim country. Ottomans threw Armenians out because they're not Muslim and they refuse to convert, most of them, and Syria welcomed them. So we are grateful for that welcoming, and we're grateful for America also welcoming different people. But with current administration, there has been a little bit of challenge, because I think people are going to their fears. The administration, I think, is tapping their fears of they're going to lose abundance, or these other people are going to come in and take away their jobs or livelihood or whatever. But there is enough for abundance for everyone in this earth. We just have to be creative, and just like a tapestry or a rainbow has many colors, but we don't say, oh, purple is better than yellow, yellow is better than orange. No, they're all come together to create the rainbow. And we as humans, different identities, come together to create a rainbow, not to create wars and discrimination and very, very narrow-mindedness to, after 9/11, they start harassing Arab markets and Arab stores, and now they're harassing the Asians. This is also coming from our administration, who a lot of our leaders are just busy comparing their own egos and not the wellness of the populations that they are leading. They're not thinking about that. They are thinking more selfishly, more narrow-minded, and more lack of energy. When you extend love, your energy is expanded 7 feet all around, front, back, right, left, up above the head and below the feet. But when you start thinking about lack and walls and constriction and the other, us against them, then you have already constricted that energy and it made it dark. And that's when illnesses also sustain. They stay in dark, damp, and constricted, no oxygen areas.
Right. The identity issue is such a double-edged sword, because from the one perspective, we celebrate the differences and the strengths that differences bring in, right? It's even like evolutionarily speaking, the organisms that survive best are the ones that can adapt to new situations, and that comes in from a variety of even genetic and diversity among itself. So that's one side of it. It makes us stronger because we do have these different perspectives, we have different experiences, we have different knowledge that we bring to the table. But then on the other side, it separates us. It makes us differentiate from you're different than I am. You're from a different group than I am. Therefore, you're not part of us. And so that's the other side of it. how do you see things going forward in terms of incorporating this identity and the strength from it? And can we evolve to go beyond these separations based on identity?
It's a little, humanity is having a challenge to go beyond that. I am afraid, I am sad to observe that we have these calamities, disasters that bring us together. Just like it happened after 9/11, for 6 months we were serving at the really ground zero, helping the police as well as providing free training. I was at the professor at Fordham University at that time. Every weekend I was conducting all-day trainings for all the psychologists who were lost what to do, because trauma psychology is a specialized field and not too many people were practicing that in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area. So every weekend they came for free trainings that I provided, and we realized that we come together after a disaster. There is a honeymoon phase. Let me just mention the stages of coping, and then I'll come back to the answer. So when we have disasters, the first is shock and disbelief, right? Oh no, it's not happening here. It's just in China. And we have great doctors and great country we are. We don't need to be concerned about that. That was the conversation in January. And then there is the, after the shock and disbelief is the denial. And we went through a couple of months of denial until, almost the middle of March. And we cracked down with this physical distancing. They keep calling social distancing. It's not social, it's physical. You need the social connection. You don't want to distance socially in the times of crises. So then we have the denial, and then we need to discharge our emotions, emotional release. You need to do that. This is the time for emotional release. And then the last stage is recovery, which may take about a decade or longer, depending on which country. The poorer countries will take much longer time. Now, the honeymoon phase that happens in the beginning, after 9/11, the honeymoon phase was so wonderful to observe. Neighbors who didn't know each other's names, now they were cooking together, watching the kids and alternating and helping one another. In the streets, in the markets, you see that loving kindness everywhere. No discriminations, no identity issues, no uncertainties. We were one.
Right. The crisis brought the unification, or this solidarity sense of it's us against now it. So it's not my identity against your identity. Now it's all of us against that other thing, and that's what unified people.
Exactly. But that is so short, like lasted maybe 6 months, not even a year. We did a 1-year follow-up, and they had amnesia already. They were like rude and, disrespectful and uncaring and pushing, shoving, and it's me everywhere. And I asked, I said, what happened to all the lessons you learned? You told us. We did research. We conducted research in Ground Zero, and there were like a lot of lessons they learned. How important it is to unite, how important it is to be mindful of our health, how important to know about other cultures and all this diversity. And it lasted only 6 months.
Is it possible
that means we go back to our robotic treadmill run, and
old habits.
If you stop someone and say, "Where are you running?" They may not even know where they're running.
Right. Do you think it's possible to somehow sustain that mode of the feeling of being that unified people because of that trauma, because of that whatever event that stressed the whole community?
That's the $1 million question. That's the $1 million question, because we have seen this after every single disaster around the world. We have gone to over 100 missions. That means, like, going 2 weeks to 3 weeks to Haiti, taking care of Haiti after the earthquake, after the hurricane, in Congo after the genocide, Rwanda. So we've done, over the 32 years, we've done about over 100 missions. And we've seen this the same in every country. So I'm a little discouraged about it, but I don't get easily discouraged. So I am still, even in between disasters, we still continue educating people monthly and getting them materials and research, so that they know that ultimately that is our purpose, to stay in that honeymoon, loving, respectful, loving kindness, mindful, helpful phase. But you know what happens? Our ego gets in the way. Our ego, if you go back to Freudian, is very selfish, self-centered, self-caring, and even to a point of, I don't care about the others, me. That's right. Our ego. And it seems like a lot of us have challenges to manage the ego. The way to manage the ego is to also develop spiritually, ecologically, connect with Mother Earth. That's why our 7th step for healing has, the first step is identification of your feeling. We call it EQ, and this is the handout. If we don't manage our emotions daily, they turn to anger. You see in the center? Mm-hmm. Every emotions, frustration, anger, hurt, sadness, I'm sorry, not the anger, frustration, disappointment, all the feelings, negative feelings, can turn into anger and poison ourselves if we don't know how to manage it. So the key to our salvation is emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence and ecological intelligence. These 3 things. We don't have to do anything with IQ. IQ is whatever you're born with, and it develops until you're 10, and that's it. You can't do anything to alter that. But the EQ, emotional intelligence, you can learn until you are 90. This you can learn even if you are on spectrum, autistic spectrum. You can learn this, and it's so much fun. Kids love it. You put it on your refrigerator, and if they're acting out or having a temper, you say, "Okay, honey, come in, let me know which feeling, which face is it like you're feeling?" And then they point it, and then you sit and you play a game, help them draw something and express their feelings, talk about it, and come to an agreement what they can do about it in the next time, instead of breaking something or lashing out or hurting themselves and the others. So the real renaissance is going to come when we are emotionally, spiritually, and ecologically intelligent.
So let's step through those 3. You mentioned that the way to harness ego is in part emotionally, but also spiritually. Tell me more about what is the spiritual intelligence or spiritual aspect of it. How does that fit in? What does that mean to you as a component of combating our ego taking over in its own selfishness?
How do we harness it?
How do
Or how
we?
do emotional and spiritual and ecological interests. So when you are emotionally intelligent, you know that what you're feeling is about you. It's not about other people. Most of us are busy pointing the fingers. The other identity, it's all about the Asians, it's all about the Mexicans. Every month we have a different identity. We want to point our problems on them. But we never look at all these fingers that are pointing towards us.
Huh.
So emotional intelligence helps us to focus internally. What can I do? It's easy to point the finger. Oh, it's the government. Oh, it's this. It's the mayor. It's this. It's my boss. It's my house. It's my partner. And we keep changing partners. Somehow we have the same problem because we're not looking at those fingers that are pointing internally, and we don't want to. Our ego may be so fragile that we cannot look inside. And this time, especially COVID-19, is the time for internal examination, because this is not working. As you said, when the traffic stopped, now finally Mother Earth is enjoying some peace. And the waters in Italy, we see, are clean now, and there are fish in it, as compared to before. It was dark and the fish were dying. In China, the pollution is decreased tremendously, and they're showing us pre and post. We can all see those
Right.
differences. In LA, the traffic and the pollution, and now without pollution. So, of course, we cannot continue living completely indoors to the rest of our lives, but this is giving us a wake-up call that we need to think of alternate ways to help one another, so that we can have 50% of that, enjoy 50% of that, and think outside the box, different ways we can continue living more introspectively. What can I do to make a difference? What am I doing? What is my carbon footprint? Oh, why is my neighbor driving this big vehicle with tires humongous, that we're not in a mountainous area. We don't need that's a gas guzzler.
Right.
We don't need all that pollution. So we need to all ask ourselves, what can we do to be able to love Mother Nature more closely? First of all, love ourselves, not the external, in terms of showers and brushing teeth and annual checkups. How many of you do take mental health checkups annually? That's what I've been lacking for 30 years, but I can't seem to be able to get to lawmakers where they make this pass it as a law or something, because we have so many emotional issues that are not even the insurance agents, insurance companies are not providing reimbursement for mental health. Why is that? Mental health is more important in many ways than physical health, because you get the physical health after you ignored your mental health needs. And the anger creates a lot of acid in your GI, so you're having irritable bowel and all these GI problems. There are like 5 fancy names, but that's your emotions. You're eating your emotions. You can express them and release that.
What I see and what I'm hopeful is that there is a renaissance in reframing how we look at mental health. And what I mean by that is, it's been, for the longest time, it's been stigmatized to, you're going to see a therapist, a counselor, what's wrong with you?
Are you
It's as
crazy?
you're crazy, you have some, mental issues, and I feel that that's such a big part of this reluctance for people to go. It seems that there is some progress. So all the work that you've done over 30 years, talking about it and bringing it to attention to others, it seems that more and more is being done about accepting mental health as an important component in our lives, instead of having this perspective of mental health is for those who are crazy and they need that professional help to deal with issues. It seems that more and more people are accepting that this is such a huge part of our lives that we need to address it. We need to incorporate it into our medical
Right.
self help. What do you think? And of course, and I brought in the conversation about men and how it's even more difficult for men to go in and get mental health counseling and help, because we have this suppressed feelings about mental health and what it is, because we have this macho men identity that we need to protect, because it's weakness if we go and talk to someone about issues. We don't have issues. We're men. We're tough. We're supposed to handle things. We're not going to cry. We're going to just internalize it and move on, and that's it, right? And when you do that, it's just kind of like with those other traumas that you mentioned, we suppress it and it still lives inside of us, and it's this baggage that we carry. And then other things happen when then things explode. So what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on mental health counseling moving forward? What can be done? What is being done? And what do you see in your practice shifting, hopefully more and more, towards incorporating mental health as part of our just healthy lifestyle?
Well, you mentioned two wonderful words, Renaissance and reframing. I love those words. Dag Hammarskjöld was United Nations first Secretary General. He said the only way we can survive as humans is embracing spiritual renaissance. He created a meditation room for delegates to go there and have a quiet time to meditate, reflect, and rejuvenate themselves between those traumatic meetings or meetings where they discuss traumatic events. And reframing is a wonderful word as well, because we can do with reframing, we can do wonders, because we can take something that we have been thinking about negatively, like we used to think about mental health negatively because we didn't know. See, when we can't see something, we'd rather see a broken arm and do something to make it heal and rehabilitate, surgery or whatever, sling. But the emotional and mental has been always a mystery because people can't see it. That's why it's more and more when people are free, like with these collective traumas after 9/11, for example, a lot more people became less stigmatized to reach out and get psychological assistance. And now, again, we are seeing already the repercussions. People that are not seeking help, they are committing suicide or being depressed or drinking a lot more. And then before COVID-19 leaves us, they're going to have another problem, which is an addiction. Or if they had the addiction, that's going to be more severe. So those are, I think, these collective large-scale traumas are in a way helping us reframe and look at the positive sides of mental well-being. And hopefully with that, we can incorporate it. We don't need people to tell us you need a annual mental health check. I hope that everybody starts doing that for your own sake, because as you said, if you don't do it, it's still living inside, and it's gonna what? Guess what? It's gonna give you either a heart attack, or you're gonna have a backache, or you're gonna have a GI problem. Uh, you know how many? 90% of the backache is emotional repressed memories. Even the doctor here, surgeon, orthopedic surgeon, specialized in back surgery, Sarno, Dr. Sarno at New York Medical Center. He has a book, Mind Over Back Pain. And he, in his book, so eloquently says that the mental and emotional issues are the 90% of your back problems. And he doesn't do surgery on you, even if you beg him. If you haven't read his book, people that read his book, 50% of those who read his book no longer go for a second appointment.
How interesting.
Those other 50% that go for a second appointment, they are invited to an all-day workshop with him or somebody who's teaching his work, which is writing down all the traumas you had and reading them every morning until you are desensitized, or working with a mental health specialist. All these things are wonderful, and almost less than 8% come to actual surgery.
That's
So
amazing.
we have all the proofs that mental health issues, psychological issues cause the physical, not the physical. Well, of course, if you have physical, that also causes emotional. Then you get hopeless, uncertainty, discouragement, hurt, sadness, depression. Then you have even more after you have the physical symptoms. So you have it before, you have it during, you have it after. What is
It's
the
a
resistance?
Yeah, it's
Come
a
on.
two-way street. It's a two-way street.
Yeah,
Physical can impact your emotional, and emotional can impact your physical.
exactly, exactly, exactly. And I hope that with more of the online now, we're making it easy for people to live in their comfortable homes, and we come to their homes, and we can bring mental health to their homes. That's a new approach. Sometimes, I have had even government officials needing therapy, and they even did not want to come to my office because they said that they didn't want anybody to see that an official going to a psychologist's office. So what we had to do is meet at the gym.
Wow.
We were walking on two treadmills, 6 a.m. when nobody's in the gym. The official and we were on treadmills next to each other, and he was able to discharge his feelings while walking and talking, releasing.
Right.
So we are able to do creative ways of meeting your needs. If you still feel like it's stigmatized, you don't want to come to the office, we come to you. I have done many home visits too, because then you will see the exact feng shui and if they are hoarding and other problems, other dynamics with the members of the family, you're able to see. So it's wonderful to be able to make visits. I try to make at least one visit to their homes with my clients, because I like to see that, because there's a lot of negative energy in people's homes that they're not aware of. And we can use things such as affirmations and different kinds of sage burning to cleanse the aura and the energy, and many different other modalities and rituals to bring the vibration to an active vibration in the environment.
So this takes us to the next topic over here. But before we jump into one of the things on your website, as I was reading more about you, is you did flower therapy, and
Yeah.
and so we'll I want to talk about that. But before we jump into that topic, I just want to kind of conclude, because I have some questions queued up in my mind. How do you see that parallels between what's happening with COVID-19 pandemic right now and the 9/11 trauma that happened? Already, in terms of casualties, deaths, and everything, COVID already claimed more people. And what do you think is going to happen next after this pandemic passes? in terms of impact on mental health. We already see higher domestic violence issues domestic violence issues going up. We see more trauma, people losing their jobs, businesses closing down, and it's going to take a long time to recover from that on a financial level, on an economical level. But what about the mental health and those aspects? What do you see is going to happen after COVID-19? How can we cope with this now? And how can we cope after, it's going to be all cleared and you're going to be free to go out on the streets again and all of that? What are some of your top recommendations for people to do right now just to stay sane?
Right. Now, we have released a YouTube on 12 steps to stay sane during the COVID-19, and starting with the basics of washing hands and protecting yourself and your family, and then taking some supplements to stay strong in your immune system, which a few things that I recommend is L-lysine improves your immune system.
So that's an amino acid.
Yes, it's an amino acid. And if you have some symptoms, Wellness Formula has about 10 different combination of things to help. This is good to have at home, the Wellness Formula, in your healthy medicine cabinet, so that you can prevent from full-blown flus or viruses when you protect yourself with that. And shot of B12 strengthens also your nervous system, so that you'll be able to, your killer cells will be strong and active, protecting your immune system. And for the nighttime, I recommend magnesium complex, which helps you relax and get a good night's sleep, helps with your bowel movement, balancing your blood pressure, blood sugar, as well as anxiety and ADD or other symptoms that you have, anger or attention deficit or memory issues. Very, very good supplement. And in terms of flower remedies, I recommend for this time, especially Fearless, because a lot of people have been reporting fear, a lot of high levels of fear. Fearless. And then the mustard is good for all the anger, depression, discouragement, etc. that one feels when one is isolated or asked to stay indoors at all times. And for antiseptic, tea tree oil is great to keep handy in your purse. And rosemary oil as well is for lung protection. Protects the lungs from the foreign element. And this is good if you are susceptible to bronchitis or lung compromises in your lungs. And this is excellent for all the inflammation to decrease, as well as lavender for nighttime to help you sleep in a more peaceful way, lavender oil. So those are some of the things I recommend, but mostly try not to feed in the fear. When there's someone or the news, first of all, try to limit yourself with the news. I would say one time, 10 minutes news, one time a day is the only time is prescribed by me. The rest of the time, try to be constructive. We recommend reading, as well as meditating, as well as exercises. We have another YouTube that I'll send it to you. It's about the different stretches and exercises that we can do to strengthen ourselves physically, emotionally, and spiritually, because it has not only stretches, it has also affirmations, as well as which organs we're working on, visually imagining, visualizing that. It's called soul surfing. We called it soul surfing specifically for men because before we were saying, well, it's like yoga exercises or stretch, and then no man will come. Somehow they assume that it's for women. It's just the opposite. Started with young men in India proving their masculinity and coming of age to adulthood. So I don't know how it became a woman's thing. It wasn't intended at all. It's for every gender, all genders. Now we
Right.
have multiple genders. So now, in order to make it attractive for men, I call it emotional six pack, gentlemen.
I love it.
Not yes. Strengthen, get your emotional six pack, and with that, we encourage you to do daily check-ins. Daily check-ins is you look at this handout and you say, okay, which feeling am I feeling today? So it may be some frustration, and then you measure from 0 to 10. What level is my frustration? Because we don't have emotional thermometers, so we need to ask ourselves, 10 being the highest, what level is your frustration today? If it is below 4, just acknowledge it and journal about it. But if it is above 4, then you must take active steps for discharge. And we have 7 steps model that helps you with the discharge. The first step is what we did: identify and measure your feeling. Second step is discharge the feeling. You got to let it out. Imagine you ate something poisonous and then your body wants to vomit and you keep closing your mouth, not letting yourself vomit. Or one of your friends saying, oh, no, no, don't vomit, don't vomit. Like we say to some man or boy, we say, don't cry, don't cry. So this is really working against us. So step 2 is discharge. Just get it out. You talk with an empathic friend, you talk with a psychologist, you talk with, or you write it down, or whatever way, get it out of your system. Step 3 is receiving empathy and validation. So if you're talking with an empathic friend, your friend would say, oh, I'm so sorry, Ani, I'm sorry you're going through a bad day today. You're feeling frustrated. Oh, I'm here for you, Ani. What can I do? Can I do anything to help you? No, nothing like don't do this, or you shouldn't feel this, or oh, let's go for a drink, forget your feelings. No, those are not empathic. Step 4 is where the shift is going to happen, because now you identified, you discharged, you got validated and empathized. So step 4 is like becoming the phoenix, coming out of the ashes and learning something positive. Because the Chinese word for crisis, I don't know if you've seen it, has 2 characters. One means danger, the other means opportunity.
Opportunity.
Together, they mean crisis.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
It's such a wonderful. I remember that because it shocked me. It's because it's so true. When crisis happens, yes, it's danger, but then after the aftermath opens up the opportunity. So yeah.
Yes. And the danger is not just the disaster being danger. If we don't learn the lesson, this kind of thing is going to happen again. It's been happening. 1918 influenza, 1980 SARS, or 90, whatever it was. We had one after the other.
Right.
They are happening. They are repeating. And why is that happening? Because we are not embracing the positive lessons. Because after 6 months, we go back to our old ways. We go back to the treadmill. and we run like a robot. We don't know where, what direction, what purpose. What is your purpose in life? This is where you gotta rediscover a positive meaning. If your purpose in life was to get a bigger house and a bigger car or a bigger this, then you're at the wrong rerouting like the GPS does. You got to get back to the road. We are all suffering from that.
How do we do
We
that?
need to.
The biggest problems that I see, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience as well, you learn something new. It changes your mind. You're convinced that it's the right thing to do. And then you go back to your old habits. It seems that we need some other mechanism, some other help in order to help us entrench this, carve out this new way of doing things so that we don't go back to the treadmill. We don't go back, like you said yourself, after 9/11, we honeymoon period, 6 months when everyone was just so generous, so open, you know, just not. The racial issues went away. The neighbor with neighbor, the openness, the connection, all of that, the solidarity of the crisis brought to bear. And then 6 months later, everything went back to the status quo. Everything went back to the normal, behaviors that people had before that. What can be done is this a lost battle? Can we change ourselves in such a way that we can reshape our habits, our so we don't go back to the old ones, the bad ones?
Well, I think we can. I feel that we can, and I think at this point we have to, because it seems like it's extremely out of control. It's not just our country, it's every country in the world. So it's something that we have to pull together, because our motto at our organization is, when one helps another, both become stronger. So we have to find ways of strengthening one another, and being less absorbed and less self-centered. Yes, self-care. That's not being self-centered. We don't do self-care. We're self-centered, but we don't do the self-care. So that's a little tricky. And we have been focusing the last 10 years on self-care. Now we have all the other modules too, but we added self-care because we used to integrate self-care in all the modules of our teaching, but we realized that people thought, oh, it was just a little part of it, and then we move away from ourselves. So we created separate module just for self-care. That it doesn't mean just to shower and get a annual checkup. It really means penetrating deep in our souls and finding ways to help others rise above their level of thinking, their level of stuckness, and level of meanness, which sounds mean as well. I had a few calls from different Jehovah's Witness. Now they can't come and visit door to door. They're calling and they're saying how it's important to be Jehovah's Witness. And I said to them, that's not the important thing, because that's what's dividing us. We need to be spiritual and accept all different ways of being kind and experiencing and exercising loving kindness that brings us unity. You are not bringing unity, I told the lady. And I said, I appreciate that you have learned Armenian and you're speaking in Armenian to me. But I said, my brother is a priest, Armenian priest. My nephew is a priest, and I've written the book on forgiveness. So you cannot teach me anything about that spirituality and convince me to be in a certain denomination. I'm in a universal manner of a spirituality where it doesn't take this sect or that sect or this way or that way, which are really causing a lot of our separation. I think
Right.
religions are the organized religions are a source of discrimination, division, and
Right.
working against humanity. I think we need to, that's why I talk about spiritual quotient, spiritual intelligence, which is outside the boundaries of Jehovah's Church or Orthodox Church or, Jewish temple or a Muslim temple. It's beyond that. Look at what's happening. Does
It doesn't care.
COVID-19, yeah, it doesn't care. The presidents and prime ministers have it, and the poorest and the richest has it. Of course, the richest will have better care within their home, and hope they're not going to struggle as the poor. But the lesson is deeper in this one for us, for humanity. If we take the time, and I think it's really urgent that we take the time. We no longer can have 6 months of honeymoon or a year of honeymoon phase and then go back to status quo. It's not going to work anymore. So the fourth step is learning the lessons. The fifth step is continuing to learn on our own. Like you said, you wanted to learn about the flower essences. You wanted to learn about supplements. You wanted to learn about even the natural things like lemon, ginger, clove. Clove is so healthy to develop our strengthened immune system. So our nature is abundant, providing us, our Mother Earth provides us with everything that we need to strengthen our immune system. And we need to be mindful of the impact of the technological um, construction on the environment. There's a live discussion about 5G and its impact, how the recent testing caused the birds to die. What is the impact of that on this spread of COVID-19? That is something that we need to also address because it's impacting the electromagnetic field, and which brings us to my certification and studying electromagnetic field balancing. Electromagnetic field balancing has really impacted me because some people do not have the language or the words to express their feeling. Even after EMDR, they could not express their feelings. So we do the manual because the energy outside of us has layers to the 7 feet that I talked about. And we adjust the different layers. So if it's the past, like generational, we work on the back. We don't touch is outside. We working the fibers, external energetic fibers, and we clear those if there are congestions or blockages, etc.
I have to say that I'm immensely enjoying this conversation. It has just so many different facets, and I wanted to ask you because you started talking about electromagnetic fields and having done some work on electromagnetic field balancing, and having a engineering background and understanding electromagnetic radiation. What are your thoughts on the whole 5G controversy right now? There's a lot of conspiracy theories, and there's a lot of there's some studies, I guess, done. And what do you see from your perspective in terms of, is it harmful to us? What is your opinion on it? Especially that you're bringing in the your aspect of doing some work in an electromagnetic field balancing. What does that mean?
Yes. What does electromagnetic field balancing mean?
Yeah.
Or how do I see? I feel like the 5G is going to be a huge problem for us energetically, electromagnetically,
Is it
because we
because
are all energy.
right? But is it because it operates on like these super high frequencies and it's close to us? Because one can argue that Wi-Fi, wireless internet, cell phones is using high frequencies as well. Maybe not as high as the 5G technology, but you can make an argument that your cell phone is affecting you in a bad way. What kind of studies have you seen out there that substantiate that fear of 5G?
Um, I have not seen any recent studies except lectures that people have shown how some tests were done in Wuhan and some tests were done in other areas and what they saw happening with the nature and the animals. And also just the science itself, electromagnetically, yes, so the Wi-Fi is impacting us. The mobile phones are impacting us. um, Usually what happens 30 it takes 30 years or 50 years for the research to come to an optimal level of acceptance, and then we're going to be too late, because at that time we're going to start dealing with the brain tumors or other tumors that we're going to have to deal with. I try to stay personally 8 p.m. to 9 a.m. I have my phone in the office on a away from any room. Try to, at least I know that I cannot stay away from it because that's my source of communication, especially when I'm not in the office. But at the same time, I know the danger. The studies that I have read are about insomnia in adolescents, and it's not talking about the electromagnetic field, but more the habits
Hmm.
that adolescents are getting addicted to their phones, and they're chatting or playing games until 2 3 in the morning, and they come to classrooms at 8 o'clock like a zombie, and they're sleeping and they're not attentive, and they have more ADD, and their grades are suffering. Those are the research, psychological research studies that I have read. But those are addressing more the habit and the addictive element of the games, and having the phone in their beds and not really sleeping, which is impacting their cognition, emotional development, as well as their performance in terms of grades that they attain in their school. So it's very, very important. That's all I can say about that, because everything is energy. It starts from our thought. Like we say, oh, it's a nice day. And then it goes into our heart, and our heart starts opening up. The heart energy center opens up and embraces more. And then it goes into our hands. So we start helping people. We call people, do you need anything? I'm here for you, etc. So head, heart, and hands have to be in harmony for us to be healthy. So those are some of the things we help people how to have a detox time from technology. And it's challenging now because now the classrooms are online. Everything is through Wi-Fi and online.
Right.
Everybody's working through that. So it's really about how to balance the
Right.
time away from that, and how you can do board games, card games, writing, reading, things that I think the new generation forgot how to do those things. One of my friends' daughter was saying, oh, I don't want this classroom on the computer anymore. I want that old fashioned classroom. Now it became old fashioned already in 3 weeks of homeschooling. So you see how fast kids, acclimate to technology, and then they forget. They forget, oh, that was old fashioned. Oh, we had a classroom. And the sixth step, let me just finish the sixth and seven, and then we'll go into different areas. The sixth step is the ecological connection. We need to be mindful about what we're doing for Mother Earth on a daily basis. And this COVID-19 has shown us how hungry is Mother Earth for our loving care and attention, because we see all the beauty that comes out, no pollution, beautiful flowers, great weather, etc. And how important that is for us to have a practice. Like you have physical practice, we hope that you exercise, you walk, you run, or you do yoga or soul surfing, or um, emotional six pack, whatever it is you do on physical level. We need to have another practice on the emotional level. We talked about it, discharging in the morning your feelings. On the spiritual level, we need to have a practice, praying and meditation. One does not take the place of the other. And then we have practice with Mother Earth. Go plant something, go hug a tree, sit under a tree. Huge trees are really wonderful to sit under, especially almond and oak trees. They are known to reduce, if you have high blood pressure, which is a result of high level of stress, it reduces your stress and your blood pressure to a normal state. So having a practice of watching the sun come up in the morning, watching the sunset in the evening, have a practice that you do like few times, at least 3 times a week. And also have a plan for your intellectual pursuits, writing, drawing, um, creating something, especially now that we have a lot of time. I am asking people to go to their basements where they have photos in albums and boxes and scan them and create um, iCloud albums, or send to people, the people that are in the photo, send it to them, brighten their day and make them go on that memory lane. And there's a lot of projects that you can do. You may have VHSs at home and you can convert them to DVDs or store them. There's so many projects that I have a whole list of it, but that's what
Now
we
is the
can
time.
do. And the seventh step is having all these practices together: movement, breath work, mindfulness, meditation, and being quiet, shutting things off to be. Most of our lives we're busy doing things, but we don't think about sitting and just being with ourselves. So I just created this handout. One second. Uh, well, I think it flew away. I can't find it. But anyway, it's a triangle. One side is doing, the other side is having, our incessant need to have more and more and more. But the base of the triangle is being. The most important thing is being fully present, mindful, and also with loving kindness towards others. So these are the 7 steps for healing, and you will find it in the 5th book, Forget Me Not, 7 steps for healing our body, mind, spirit, and Mother Earth.
What other books have you, because you've written a lot of different books, and people can find them on your website and
Yes,
also on.
exactly. This was the first book. This is about almost how to step by step to help countries that are in distress. This is about humanitarian relief work.
Disaster and
And
Mass Trauma.
yes,
Right?
and it's focusing on global perspectives on post-disaster mental health management. And the next two volumes address mass trauma in emotional healing around the world. The first volume addresses natural disasters, tsunamis, hurricanes, earthquakes, etc. Volume 2 addresses human made disasters such as genocide, holocaust, incest, rape, terrorism, all the things that our humanity engages in mindlessly. And the next book we already talked about is Forgiveness and Reconciliation. And it's about the psychological pathways to peace building and conflict transformation.
I'm looking forward to
And the
reading that one myself about forgiveness. Do you offer specific steps and to dos and approaches how to go about it?
Yes, maybe we can do another a meeting and I can focus on how, because a lot of people have said to me, well, we know every religion's promote forgiveness and every religion talks about it, but it's not easy. How do you do it? It's easy to say,
Right.
but it's not easy to practice because, again, the ego gets in the way. Me.
That is so true.
So we
Eh,
need, we need to harness that.
right. And what was the next book that you were just about to show?
Oh, that's the one already showed. The fifth book is
Okay.
Forget Me Not.
Forgive me now. Okay,
Yes.
great.
Yeah.
So those are the five books that you can research for Dr. Annie Kalayjian, and she's writing a sixth book right now. I'm really interested in the the how tos, the specifics, because like you said yourself, we all know that forgiveness is important. The question is how do we do it, and any kind of tips. I also really like, and I wanted just to say that. I really like how you combine a lot of different things. You're a psychotherapist by trade, but you also look at the body, you look at the spiritual aspects of because a lot of times we think of specialists being only like in this stovepipe of, okay, I'm going to a nose doctor for all my nose, breathing, that type of stuff issues. Then I go to this person and this person. And from my perspective right now, the more I do these podcasts and I talk to a lot of interesting people, I talk to doctors and book authors, specialists, experts on stress and specialists on mental health counseling and psychotherapists like yourself, and then medical doctors and emergency room doctors who are giving all these different perspectives. What I see as a trend, and that really excites me, is that more and more of them are looking outside of just the field that they're in. They're saying like, look, we're doing this, but you need to have all these other aspects in your life that have to be combined in order to succeed, because you are not just one system. You're a system of systems. Your many different components and many different aspects must be addressed, not only cursively, but in depth. And so I'm really cherishing the fact that you are bringing a lot of those, not just like, oh, mental health is just this, but like, yeah, you look at all these other things. And when I looked at your website and I looked at your bio about all these different fields that you've experienced during your long career, I was really excited about this podcast that we're recording right now, because I knew you're going to bring in different perspectives, and that's what it's all about, bringing a lot of different perspectives, so we don't have this narrow vision. This is the way. This is the only thing to do. This is the only thing. It's more than one thing, and it's important to bring that awareness for everyone to acknowledge and to follow.
Yes. This is a wonderful time for us to reinvent ourselves. And this is a time of deep reflection and deep examination of what can we do to change the robotic treadmill run, purposeless run, to a more meaningful and positive, lifting one another up together, because the selfishness and self-centeredness has caused humanity a lot of problems, and it's coming through during this process. Even the conversations between China, America, etc., if you read through, you see that kind of selfishness. Oh no, that's only China. Or that's a Chinese, virus. And the China saying, "Oh no, that's American. America caused it," and this is all childish discussion, and we should be over that. And come to a realization, wow, this is something horrific. Let's see how we can change the way we've been living, because this is how it's happening. We are causing the trauma, and we are the reason, and we have all the solutions. I mean, if we can put a man in the moon, why can't we come together and create a solution with this, between the electromagnetic field and the nature and the ecological programs and environmental programs that being discarded or not paid attention to. This is a awakening. This is a harsh awakening for all of us.
Before we summarize what we've talked about today, I do want to bring up a separate topic, which is the flower therapy. And I want to know what got you into it? What is it? And why does it work? Does it work, and why does it work?
Right. Now, so let's go back to the energy, electromagnetic field. And this flower remedies began about maybe 80 years ago with a Scandinavian microbiologist, neurobiologist, someone who was not in flower. It wasn't created. He created it. So he was working, and he got emotionally depressed. He didn't know why. There was no cure at the time. This was in early 1900s. And so he left his work, his office, his department at the university, and he started using his garden flowers, experimenting on himself, trying to find which ones would work to help him with his depression. And then he found it. And then after he was able to cure himself, he started then continuing to work on other emotions. So his emotion was depression. He started with mustard. Mustard is here. Mustard. But then there are many other emotions. So he has 32 different flower essences for each emotion. For example, for grieving, if you have a loss, you feel loss of your job, working from home, for example, you're grieving, you find yourself crying and yearning to your previous state, I would recommend Star of Bethlehem flower remedy. That remedy is specific for grieving, for helping you with breath. How does it work? There are energy centers, 7 main energy centers in our body, starting with our crown, actually ending in our crown. This is the 7th.
Are we talking about chakras?
Yes, energy centers. They're called chakras or chi, starting with the end of the spine at coccyx area. That's the first energy center. And all the way into the crown, the 7th. And each energy center is connected with different organs. And the energy center, it's like a lotus kind of, and it vibrates. It turns like a ball of light. The energy is turning. Let's say we're working on your heart energy center, heart chakra. Heart, the color is green. So we ask you to be mindful of this green light bulb of energy vibrating through your chest. It's now, because your heart center is impacting your heart, your lungs, your bronchioles, your rib cage, and therefore affecting your blood pressure too. So all these areas are impacted from your heart energy. What impacts or suppresses the heart energy? Sadness, grieving, death, anger, frustration, disappointment, any of those negative feelings that are already become anger because they're severe, it all is here. And in other countries, like in Sri Lanka, they didn't have a word for depression. And they said, elephant sitting on my chest. That meant depression. Or a rock on my chest. Or feeling tightness in my heart. That was a description
So
for
interesting.
depression. Yes. So these flower remedies, they say specifically which flowers for each one. And then there is a little bit of water and alcohol to sustain it. They work on the vibrations of each individual area. Let's say you're taking one for mustard, it's impacting your heart energy center and your first energy center. The first energy center is about fear and also trust of yourself and the universe. So the exercise that we do for the root chakra, you will find this in the soul surfing YouTube. I think I sent you those. If I didn't, I will email it to you.
Yeah, we'll post it in our show notes so that people have the link to get to that YouTube video.
Exactly. So we inhale and we imagine, and when we exhale, we go down in a squatting position all the way down. And we imagine that our spine is growing roots connecting to Mother Earth. So when we feel our spine is connected with deep 7 feet roots connecting to the earth, we feel more stable. We don't feel fear. We feel confident. We feel rooted. We feel connected. Imagine an oak tree with roots down to the earth. Tsunamis, hurricanes, other winds will come, nothing will happen and nothing will threaten their existence because they are grounded. So this will help you ground by squatting down, imagining red ball of energy vibrating around the end of your coccyx, the end of your spine at the coccyx area. And that both imagination and affirmation, because we direct you with affirmation. You repeat after me. I say, I am connected to Mother Earth. I trust and love Mother Earth, and Mother Earth nurtures and takes care of me. So that gives both in and out. The cycle is complete. It's not just we taking care of Mother Earth. Is Mother Earth taking care of us? That's why it's important to give and receive. When we keep giving as healthcare professionals and we don't stand still to receive, then we are half complete because we need to receive. The same with Mother Nature. If we keep taking and taking and taking from the fruits, the flowers, the abundance, and we don't give the nurturance back, then Mother Nature is suffering. So the vibrations, the flower remedies is causing the vibrations to unlock some of the clogs in the heart or in the throat where we can't talk honestly, assertively. We're scared. We're not confident of what we're saying, and then we feel choked up, and that's the throat. The color is turquoise, and thyroid is and tonsils all attached to that energy center. So we visualize the turquoise ball of energy vibrating, awakening, and thyroid, you know how important that is our like regulator, because if your thyroid is low, then you feel like depressed. It's exactly the same symptoms. You feel like you're not motivated, you don't want to do anything, you're not interested in life, life doesn't matter. And that's exactly how it could be translated to a depression. And the same thing with vitamin D. You know that I was brought a gentleman, 21 years of age. He couldn't finish his last course to graduate college because his mother said he's depressed, he's not getting out of bed. And I said, well, please let him go get his blood tested. Vitamin D, thyroid, and B12 especially. I gave all the list of necessary items. Sure enough, the D was so depleted. It was incredible. I was wondering how he even was walking. It was that low.
Wow.
So that's why you need to be holistic, because I could be talking to him until he's blue in the face. If he has vitamin D deficiency, he's not even able to comprehend what I'm talking. He needs to be in balance first.
Right.
So all these supplements and all these remedies are very important. And some people boo-hoo about it. Oh, I don't take vitamins. Oh, I don't believe in those. I eat, I eat oranges and I eat kale. Well, you have to eat like 10 kilos of kale to get the supplement that you've enough level as in one supplement. Of course, we like you to eat healthy. We like you to have kale and oranges, fruits and vegetables and grains and a balanced meal. But that's not going to really stop you. If you are working indoors, you are not out in the sun, you're going to 90% of our population in America, even in California, are testing for very low in vitamin D. So that's something very important for us to pay attention.
Are these the flower therapy? Is this like is this the same thing as aromatherapy, or is it or do you ingest those, or do you smell
Aromatherapy
them?
is different.
Okay.
Yes, aroma is only to smell or
Right.
to infuse in an infuser,
Right.
such as this one I have in my office. Infuser
Mm-hmm.
is very good. Or you can put it in a little sachet and put it under your pillow. Let's say if it's lavender, but the flower remedies are to ingest. So this one is spray. You spray like this in your mouth and lots of water. Water is the key to
Right.
discharge. And this one, the mustard, is a dropper. So you squeeze and drop on under your tongue and drink 8 ounces of water.
Gotcha.
Water is very, very important.
All right. Well, that sums that up. I will ask you to send me some links on specific brands, maybe that you feel are trusted in terms of quality of a product, because it's also important to get quality, not only something, but
Yes.
something of good quality.
Yes.
I want to thank you again for just being such a huge source of information about all these different various topics that we talked about. And we only sort of scratched the surface, because reading through your bio over here, other things that we haven't mentioned, and I would love to have you again on the show.
Sure.
I'd love to talk more about some of the other things that you have experience with, such as the aspect of mind, body, eco, spirit healing, the combination of those, the movement therapy that we briefly talked about before we started recording this show, and all sorts of other topics such as family and couple of neighborhood meditation, corporate meditation, all these different aspects that I think are so important to talk about, because they are bringing things to the next level. It's almost like we are evolving, and we need to incorporate all these other aspects of taking care of ourselves and connecting with others. And so I welcome you back to the show next time, and we'll talk about some of the topics that we haven't covered in this one. any final thoughts? I mean, I'd love for you to kind of just summarize, since you are just so on it in terms of listing things. I would love for you just to kind of give me and the audience, so we can kind of clip that out, the seven aspects, and just summarize some of the things that we talked about.
Right. So just a quick summary of the 7 step. We start with assessment, trying to identify the feeling, what negative feelings are we having, and measuring that from 0 to 10, 10 being the worst. The second step is release, very important to get it out. Think of negative emotions just like poison. You don't want to keep it in your body. It will complicate your organs and give you more of a problem. Third step is receiving empathy and validation, someone who can, really be with you and not judge you for what you're feeling and how you're feeling. And then the fourth stage, which is Viktor Frankl's stage, is learning the lesson that every suffering, no matter how deep, it has a wonderful, wonderful lesson hidden for you to discover. So after you discharge, you cannot find the lesson before you discharge. You got to get the poison out, and then aha moment comes out and you learn the lesson, and then you start gathering more vital information. We have reading lists, we have lists for remedies, we have supplements, we have different kind of books, mindfulness apps that are free you can download for meditation, etc. The sixth step is getting out, being in nature, walking in the grass, bare feet, grounding ourselves electromagnetically to the mother nature, and loving and appreciating mother nature, embracing the sunset, sunrise, hugging trees, taking care of plants, and being one with mother nature, not seeing that and us, we're humans and we dominate. No, we are all in this together. And then the last stage is movement therapy, using breath. And I can do a whole session on therapeutic breathing, because most of us don't know how to breathe well. And we use the shoulders. When I ask people how to breathe deeply, they go, that's not breathing. Real breathing is using your diaphragm, extending your diaphragm out and expanding your diaphragm. And diaphragm is like a muscle. The more you use, the more you have more oxygen into your system, which is opening up our darkened souls and minds and giving us new perspective. And with the movement also, we use affirmations as well as color consciousness and which organs we're focusing on to strengthen the inner, from inner out, as well as outer in through Mother Nature. So I like to end with our 2 important mottos. The first one is, when one helps another, both become stronger. So we leave this yes, the ego on the side. We keep it on a leash. And the second motto is, shared sorrow is shared sorrow is half sorrow, while shared joy is double joy. So this is the time to share. When we share our sadness, it becomes half. But when we share our joy, it becomes double. You see how people start smiling just when you smile. They were sitting in a very gloomy day, and I smile and say, have a good day, and they smile. It's contagious. So be the change agent. Make people smile. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you so much. And for those of you who want to learn more about Dr. Annie Kalayjian's practice and about the links to her books, we're going to put that stuff in the show notes. Here's a page from Dr. Kalayjian's website, drkalayjian.com, drkalayjian.com. And there you can find more about what she's done in this field. And also you can also find her on the, she also has a website, meaningfulworld.com. And
Yes.
we are going to be talking about these additional topics that we haven't covered today in another podcast. And thank you again for being on the show. I really appreciate it, and for bringing all these different perspectives, for connecting a lot of different things for people, and for sharing your knowledge. And until next time, I'm Adrian Sinclair with Apodcast with interesting people, and we will see you next time.